Hello, everybody. We're here today to talk about how the Constitution can be amended. So we're dealing with Tennessee Government and Civic Standard 10 that says describe in order the steps of the process through which the Constitution can be amended. So that's exactly what this set of notes is going to do. So we're looking at this. So by the end of this set of notes, you should be able to describe how the Constitution can be changed. All right, so our Constitution is also known as the supreme law of the land because of that supremacy clause in the Constitution. Remember, the supremacy clause said that federal laws, right, the federal Constitution supersedes every other law that is made. So the Constitution, if you have two laws that go against each other, that say opposite things, the Constitution is the one that wins. Okay, which is why laws can be declared unconstitutional, and that means you don't use them anymore. The Constitution is also seen as a flexible document. It's also called a living document. And that means it has to change over time, right? Because the laws that were necessary or the laws that made sense in the 1780s and 1790s, whenever the Constitution started, those laws aren't necessarily the same laws we need now, right? There were laws we need now that weren't relevant to back then, right? Laws like internet piracy laws, they didn't need that in the 1700s, but we do need that today. So the Constitution has to be able to change with it, okay? Our government has to be able to change with the time periods we're living in. And that is what the amendment process does. It keeps our Constitution updated, okay? We call any written changes to the Constitution amendments. And we write the amendment, and if it gets passed, it actually gets tacked on to the end of the Constitution. There are currently 27 amendments that have been added to the Constitution. There are several that have been proposed and failed. There are a few that have been proposed and just enough states haven't voted on it yet. So we'll get there, okay? So the amendment process, it's really a three-step process. To get an amendment added to the Constitution, you need step 1 and 2. You need to propose the amendment, and then you need to ratify it or pass it. Step 3 is if an amendment is added to the Constitution and then the citizens don't like the effects of that amendment, there is a process you go through to get rid of that amendment. So step 1, proposal, right? First, you got to decide we need to change this. And there are two ways you can propose a law or an amendment to the Constitution. The first way is you get 2/3 of both houses of Congress. So 2/3 of the House of Representatives and 2/3 of Senate have to pass the same amendment. That equals to 320 of the 535 members of Congress have to agree we need this amendment. That's the first way to get one proposed. The second way to get one proposed is if Congress isn't doing their job and Congress isn't passing an amendment that's needed. 2/3 of the states can ask Congress to call a national constitutional convention. And that constitutional convention will be specifically to propose that amendment. Now this means for today, 34 of the 50 states would have to call on Congress to start this convention so that they could propose this amendment. Now, this option has never been used. Congressmen, at least so far in history, have been pretty up to date on what most people in their state want, and they want to get reelected. So they've been pretty willing to go in and do constitutional amendments when they need it. There's some changes here and there, and some people who didn't, but for the most part, the first step is enough. Okay, so that first way is how all all of our amendments have been proposed. So that's how you get it proposed. Now people have to decide, are we going to do this or not? So after the amendment is proposed, it must be ratified or approved. And to ratify it, okay, Congress proposes it, but they don't get to vote on it to get it added, right? They just propose it and then it goes to the states. And 3/4 of the states have to approve or ratify the amendment. And if that happens, it gets added to the Constitution. Now, 3/4 of the states today is 38 of the 50. All right, so there are 2 ways that the states can ratify. The first is it just goes to the normal lawmaking body of each state. So today it would go to Nashville in Tennessee. And the state legislature, the people we elected to go to the state government, they would vote on whether or not this law should pass. And if 2/3 of the states do that and they all vote for it to go, then it becomes an amendment. Of our 27 amendments, 26 of them have been approved this way. There's only one amendment that used the other way. The other way is you take it out of the lawmakers' hands. The Constitution is proposed, it goes to the states. So option 1 is the state government's vote. Option 2 is the voters of each state vote. And what that is the state holds a special election, a convention, where the voters show up and vote themselves yes or no. And it's a simple majority vote wins. Whoever gets the most votes wins that state. This has only happened once, and that was for the 21st Amendment. The 21st Amendment was the repeal of the 18th Amendment. 18th Amendment was prohibition. 21st Amendment was the one that gets rid of prohibition. And they did this through a state convention because they were afraid that the people who were elected to the state legislatures would be too afraid to get rid of prohibition. So they said if it goes straight to the voters of the state, then we'll know for sure what the American citizens themselves want. So step 3, if an amendment happens and it doesn't work out the way we plan, like prohibition, right? Prohibition actually created a lot of organized crime. So they can be repealed or canceled. Now, they don't ever get taken off of the Constitution. Doesn't happen. Once it's on, it's on. So the only way to cancel it is to add another amendment. Okay? You have to add another amendment basically saying, forget about that one up there. And that's what happens. Amendments are repealed if those citizens do not like the effects of the amendment. So, for example, 18th Amendment caused prohibition. Enough people didn't like that. They passed another amendment, the 21st Amendment. And the 21st Amendment basically says, forget the 18th Amendment. Okay? This has only happened once. Only one has been repealed to date, and it was the Prohibition Amendment. Couple of interesting facts here. Amendments all start off as bills, like it's a law. Okay? They all start off as a bill in Congress, and Congress places a time limit. If you propose an amendment in Congress and you can't get you can't get enough members of the House and the Senate to approve that amendment in 7 years, it goes away. You got to propose it again. Okay. Presidents have absolutely no role in the amendment process. There is no presidential check or balance in this. He doesn't get to propose. He doesn't get to vote, and he cannot veto one if one gets passed. So the check and balance here is it starts in Congress and then the states decide it. Okay, that's the check and balance. On average, if you look at American history and you look at our amendments, on average, amendments are ratified about every 15 years. Okay. And that is your set of how the amendment is, or how amendments are added to the Constitution notes. See you in a second.